The merciless summer sun bore down on Ella June's back as she leaned into the wagon, her thin arms shaking under the strain. Widow's Hill rose steep and mocking before her, its slope chewing into the wagon wheels, sinking them deeper into the dust with every shove. Before we kick off this adventure, don't forget to hit like on the video and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Nebraska Territory, 1867. A place where dreams were made or broken, often both. Ella had felt her share of heartbreak. "Come on," she hissed through clenched teeth, sweat soaking through the cotton of her dress. The single mule she had left groaned pitifully, worn down after the long haul from St. Louis. She pushed harder boots, slipping in the loose earth, the burden of her hopes for a new life suddenly heavier than she could bear. Hoofbeats drummed behind her, faint at first, until a tall shadow fell across her bent frame. She paused, wiped her brow with the back of her hand, and turned. A man on a chestnut stallion sat watching her. He said nothing. The brim of his hat shaded most of his face, but she saw the square jaw lined with stubble. In one smooth motion he dismounted and tied his horse beside her flagging mule. Ella froze, startled, as the stranger moved to the back of the wagon and pressed his broad shoulders against it. He glanced at her blue eyes, sharp against sun-darkened skin. "Push!" He rumbled, his voice low and rough from long silence. She hesitated a heartbeat, then dug in again. With his strength added to hers, the wagon creaked forward, sluggish at first, then rolling with a steady momentum. At the crest, Ella sagged against the sideboard's chest, heaving. The man straightened, tipped his hat with one finger. "Thank you, Ella," finally managed, her voice shaky. "I don't know what I'd have done if you hadn't shown up." He gave a single nod, eyes flicking from the weary mule to the overloaded wagon, then to her face. "Where's your husband?" he asked flatly. "Dead." Ella answered, bitterness still sharp after 8 months. "Cholera near Independence." Something shifted in his eyes, a flicker of old pain. "Name's Cole Travis," he said after a pause. "Ella June." She returned, offering her hand. He took it briefly, rough calluses brushing her palm. "Most folks call me stubborn." A hint of a smile ghosted across his lips. "Where you headed, Mrs. June? Riverbend," she said, nodding westward. "My brother's got land out that way." Cole's expression darkened. "That's 3 days on a good team. Your mule won't make it pulling this much alone." Ella lifted her chin, defiance flashing in her eyes. "I'll manage." "No," he said simply. "You won't." He glanced at the fading sky. "There's a creek a mile up. We'll camp there and sort this out in the morning." She shot back, though relief swelled inside her. "I don't remember asking for company, Mr. Travis." "You didn't need to," he replied, already untying his reins. "And it's just Travis." As he guided the wagon toward the promise of water, Ella studied the confident set of his shoulders, the way he carried himself. In 23 years, she had met plenty of men, her strict preacher father, her dreamer husband, who never followed through, the countless opportunists who offered a widow protection on the trail. But something about Cole Travis was different. He carried a quietness not from shyness, but from careful watching. Just as he said, the creek shimmered through the prairie grass. He helped unhitch the mule, tended both animals, while Ella gathered wood. "You've done this before," he remarked, as she built a small fire with practiced ease. 3 months on the trail," she said, striking a match. "You either learn or you don't last." Cole nodded, understanding. "I'll scare up some meat." He came back an hour later with 2 rabbits already skinned. Ella dropped them into the beans she had soaking, tossed in wild onions from the bank. Silence stretched as the stew bubbled, broken only by her stolen glances at him. Younger than she first guessed, maybe 30 lines at the eyes, from squinting at sun and sorrow. "What takes you to Riverbend?" she asked at last. "Work," he said, feeding sticks to the fire. "Farrier blacksmith. Shoe horses mend wheels, hammer out whatever's broke. My brother says Riverbend's growing. Store church, maybe more soon." "I've heard the same," Cole said, eyes unreadable in the dusk. They ate quietly, the stew warming her belly. It had been a long time since she'd shared supper with anyone. Nights on the trail were lonely, always listening for threats in the dark. "You should rest," Cole said when she finished. "I'll take first watch." "You don't have to," Ella protested, though fatigue tugged at her. "Territory ain't as tame as it looks," he said, hand drifting to the pistol on his hip. "Plenty of bandits hunting easy pickings." Outlaws were always on the lookout for the easy pickings. Ella June wanted to protest, to tell him she wasn't so helpless that she'd made it this far on grit alone. But deep down, she knew the truth. A lone woman hauling a wagon full of belongings was exactly the sort of prize road agents dreamed of. "Thank you," she said, instead slipping back to her wagon and rolling out her bedding. Just before tugging the canvas closed, she caught one last look at Cole Travis. His profile was carved in firelight, steady and unflinching against the wide prairie night. Morning broke with dew shining in the grass and birds lifting their song to the sky. Ella woke more rested than she had in months, puzzled at first by the quiet calm that greeted her dawn. Then she remembered she wasn't alone anymore. By the creek, she found Cole washing the dust from his face with cold water. His shirt hung loose on the bank scars, lacing his back like cruel handwriting. They were the kind left by a whip, not a soldier's bullet. Ella quickly turned her gaze aside, though not before seeing the wiry strength built from years of hard work. Morning, she called out, making her presence known. He straightened, pulling his shirt over his shoulders. "Morning," he answered, nodding toward the fire, where coffee already brewed. "Hope you don't mind I took the liberty." "Not at all." She poured herself a tin cup and let the bitter warmth settle her. "Did you get any sleep?" she asked. "Enough," he said, though she doubted he had rested much at all. Then his tone turned practical. "We need to talk about that wagon." Ella sighed, bracing for what she already knew was coming. "The mule can't haul it alone," Cole said. "And you're dragging too much weight. We'll have to cut it down." The words struck deep. Everything she owned lay in that wagon. Her past, her husband Owen Tate's dreams, her own fragile hopes. "I can't just leave it all behind," she began, but he was already shaking his head. "You'll never make Riverbend otherwise, not with winter closing in. You don't want to be caught on these plains when the snow falls." She knew he was right, though the thought of abandoning more pieces of her life knotted her stomach. "What do you suggest? My horse can help pull. But even then, a third of the load has to go. Keep only what keeps you alive or can't be replaced." So they spent the morning sorting through her life. The cherry table her grandmother had left her too heavy. 3 of her 5 dresses luxuries. Books, china, the small writing desk she'd once hoped to teach, from all gone. Every piece set aside felt like tearing something from her chest. And yet with each loss, she felt leaner, tougher, stripped down to what mattered most. "You're keeping that?" Cole asked, nodding at the battered violin case. "Yes," Ella said firmly. "It was Owen's. He taught music." Cole only nodded, not pressing further. "Can you play not well?" she admitted softly. "He was trying to teach me when—" Her voice broke the memory too raw. By noon, they had reorganized the lighter wagon. Cole rigged a harness so his horse and her mule could pull together, then stashed the discarded belongings in a hollow, covering them with stones. "If you'd like," He said we can send someone back for these things once you're settled. Ella understood the kindness in his words, but they both knew she would never see those items again. By afternoon, they were rolling smoother, the team pulling with ease. Cole rode alongside, eyes sweeping the horizon, making Ella wonder what ghosts or dangers he kept expecting. "How long have you been out here?" she asked, craving conversation. "Since '59. Came for the gold rush, stayed for the land. Did you ever strike it rich?" A crooked grin tugged at his face. "Found more trouble than gold. And as for family," the question slipped out before she could stop it. "None at all." "None living," he answered, after a long pause, his tone shutting down any further prying. They covered close to 15 miles before making camp at a trickle of water. Their routine came easy, he saw to the stock she built supper. Together the work felt lighter. As twilight spread lavender and gold across the sky, Ella found herself watching him mend a loose strap on her wagon. His hands were sure strong, but precise. "Why are you helping me?" she asked suddenly. Cole's hand stopped, then moved again. "Does it matter?" "Yes," she pressed. "Most men expect payment for their kindness." He lifted his gaze, blue eyes meeting hers straight on. "When I was a boy, my mother tried to cross these plains. Our wagon busted an axle. Nobody stopped to help. She died of fever before we made it to the next post." He turned back to his work. "I swore I'd never ride past someone in need, especially not a woman alone." The plain honesty of his words moved Ella deeper than any gallant promise. "I'm sorry about your mother," she said softly. He gave a short nod, accepting her sympathy without dwelling on it. "We should reach Boone Creek tomorrow evening. There's a trading post there," he said. "We can restock. After that, 2 more days to Riverbend, if the weather holds." Ella nodded, though for the first time she felt a strange heaviness. She had been clinging to this goal for months, her brother Grant Hollis waiting the chance for a new life. Yet on the edge of reaching it, she wasn't sure why her heart sank at the thought. For months, Ella June had clung to one thought, finding her brother and starting fresh. Yet now, with that goal nearly in reach, a strange hesitation stirred in her chest. That night, lying in the wagon while the prairie wind whistled through the tall grass, her mind turned not toward Riverbend, but toward the man stretched beneath the stars outside. A stranger, only days before Cole Travis, had somehow become the one she trusted with her very life. The West had a way of forging bonds quick and fierce, cramming months of knowing into a handful of hard days. Morning broke with a heaviness in the air, the promise of rain. Cole studied the western sky, the clouds piled dark and mean. "We need to move," he warned as they hurried to break camp. "That's a gully washer rolling in." They pushed the animals hard, the team sensing the storm and surging forward with nervous energy. By midday, thunder rolled, and the sky was nearly swallowed by black clouds. "Cottonwoods ahead, 3 miles," Cole shouted over the rising wind. "We'll take shelter there." The rain struck in sheets, blinding and cold, soaking Ella through in minutes. She gripped the wagon seat as lightning split the sky. Cole's jaw tightened, his focus locked on keeping the team from bolting. The cottonwoods rose like ghosts in the downpour, their broad limbs offering a break from the storm. Cole steered them under the canopy, where the rain eased to a steady drip. Inside the wagon, he called over the thunder. "I'll handle the stock." She hated leaving him out there, but knew the horses needed calming first. Clambering inside, she stripped off her drenched clothes, pulled on dry ones, and readied blankets and a lantern. When Cole finally ducked in, he was soaked to the bone, hair plastered dark across his forehead. Without thinking, Ella pressed a blanket into his hands and tugged off his sodden jacket. "You'll catch your death like this," she scolded, falling into old habits of caring for others. "Wouldn't be the first time I weathered worse," he said, but he wrapped himself in the blanket with quiet gratitude. The wagon was cramped, with both of them inside their knees nearly touching as the lantern threw a soft glow between them. Outside, the storm howled through the branches and hammered against the canvas. Cole glanced at the sky through a gap. Might as well settle in, we're not moving till it passes. Ella nodded, suddenly aware of how close they sat, the scent of rain clinging to him, droplets still shining on his lashes. A charge hummed in the air, thicker than the storm. "Tell me about your brother," Cole asked, breaking the silence. "Grant's 3 years older. He fought for the Union, then headed west when it ended. Said he couldn't stomach Ohio after all he'd seen." She traced a finger along the blanket. "He wrote that he found peace in Riverbend building something new. When Owen Tate died, he told me to come." "And what will you do there?" "They need a school teacher. I taught back in St. Louis before I married." A faint smile touched her lips. "I always loved helping children discover the world in books." "You'll be good at it," Cole said firmly. "How would you know that?" she asked, surprised. "I've watched you. You're patient with the mule, with mending things. You don't rush. That's what makes a good teacher." His words warmed her more than the blanket. "And will you stay in Riverbend?" "For a while," he said vaguely, "till something else pulls me along. Tried putting down roots once. Didn't stick." Their eyes met, and for an instant Ella saw a loneliness in him that echoed her own. "Everyone needs a place to belong," she said softly. A crash of thunder split the sky. Cole's hand closed over hers instinctively. For a moment, neither moved, the simple touch sparking something unspoken. Then he pulled back, clearing his throat. "Storm's on top of us. Horses will be jumpy." "Will they be all right?" she asked, voice unsteady. "I tied them down well. They've seen storms." He listened to the roar outside. "Lowlands'll flood. We may need another route tomorrow." His steady words brought back a sense of normalcy, but Ella couldn't shake the memory of his hand on hers or the look they had shared. They passed the hours with talk, Cole spinning tales of the trails he'd ridden, towns he'd seen, people he'd crossed paths with. Ella shared bits of her childhood in Ohio, her years teaching, and the dreams that drew her west despite the risks. Some topics they avoided: his life before the territories, her marriage, the griefs they both carried. Still, in the dim glow of the lantern, she felt she was coming to know him in ways few ever had. When the storm softened to a steady rain, exhaustion took hold. Cole rose, shrugging back into his damp coat. Despite Ella's protests, he insisted on sleeping outside. "It wouldn't be proper," he said, simply stepping out into the wet night. "It wouldn't be proper," Cole Travis said, tugging on his still damp coat. "In the middle of nowhere, propriety seems a strange worry," Ella June replied, with a wry smile, though she didn't press him. For all the trust that had grown between them, they were still in truth strangers. At the wagon's flap, Cole paused, his tall frame outlined in the lantern glow. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for what she asked. The talk. Been a long spell since I said that much." With that, he was gone, leaving Ella to wonder how fate had brought this solitary man into her path, and at the feelings stirring in her heart, feelings a widow of less than a year had no right to entertain. Dawn came clear and sharp, the world scrubbed clean by the storm. As Cole had warned, the lowlands lay under water, forcing them to take a longer road that added half a day's ride. "We won't reach Boone Creek before night," he said, studying the flooded ground. "But there's a homestead 10 miles west. They might give us shelter." The detour cut through rougher country with rocky ridges and patches of buoyant instead of open prairie. Cole grew more watchful, his hand drifting often toward his revolver eyes, scanning the horizon. "Something wrong?" Ella asked, when he allowed only the briefest stop at midday. "Bad reputation here," he said, steadying her back onto the wagon seat. "Best not to linger." By late afternoon, she understood his unease. A blackened wagon lay ahead, burned to its bones and stripped bare by scavengers. Cole urged their team past without comment, but his jaw was tight. "Raiders," Ella whispered. He gave a short nod. "They prey on settlers, especially those traveling light." "Like us," she murmured, her stomach knotting. "We'll be fine," Cole assured her, though his hand checked the rifle in its scabbard. "Just keep sharp." As the sun dipped, a homestead appeared, cabin, barn, corral, smoke curling from the chimney. A gray-bearded man stood in the doorway, rifle across his arms. "Stay here," Cole told Ella, dismounting and walking forward with empty hands raised. "Afternoon," he called, looking for a place to bed down. Storms flooded our way to Boone Creek. The homesteader squinted. "Just the two of you?" "Yes, sir. I'm Cole Travis. The lady is Ella June, a widow bound for Riverbend to join her kin." Something in Cole's voice or bearing eased the man's suspicion. He lowered the rifle. "Name's Jed Thorne. My wife Nell's inside. You can use the barn." "We're obliged," Cole said, motioning Ella to bring the wagon up. The Thornes proved kinder than their wary greeting. Nell, a small woman with gentle eyes and quick hands, pressed them to sit at her table. "First company in 3 months," she explained, serving venison stew and cornbread. "Most steer clear of this road on account of Duke Slade's gang." "They're the raiders?" Ella asked. Jed nodded grimly. "Been tormenting folks out here near 2 years. Army can't pin 'em down, and the territorial marshals are stretched thin." "How many ride with him?" Cole asked, his tone calm, but his eyes intent. "5 last we heard, led by a man named Duke Slade." Jed's look sharpened. "You've heard of them?" "I've heard stories." Cole answered carefully. "Lately they've been thick around Boone Creek. That trading post draws new settlers plenty to steal." Jed tore a piece of cornbread. "Word is they're planning something big." The talk shifted to weather-winter prospects, scraps of news from travelers. Yet Ella noticed Cole's mind was elsewhere, his polite replies edged with distraction. Later, after helping Nell clear the table, Ella and Cole moved to the barn. They laid their bedrolls on opposite sides of the hay-strewn floor. As Ella settled her blanket, she couldn't shake the distance in him. "You've been quiet all evening," she said as he checked the doors. "Just thinking on the road ahead." "Is it the Slade gang?" He turned face unreadable. "We'll be fine if we stay to the main trail. Riverbend's only 2 days off. That's not what I asked." Ella pressed, sensing what he wasn't saying. Cole raked a hand through his hair, frustration slipping through. "The less you know, Ella, the safer you'll be." The formality stung after the closeness they'd shared. "I think we're past. Mrs. June, don't you? I've seen enough danger not to be sheltered like a child." He studied her, weighing something in his mind. At last he came over and sat on a hay bale near her. His voice dropped. "Duke Slade isn't just another outlaw. He was a Confederate guerrilla rode with Quantrill's raiders. When the war ended, he brought his men west and kept fighting his own war. They go after Union vets, government men, anyone they mark as an enemy. Like my brother," Ella whispered, a chill running through her. "Grant Hollis fought for the Union, Cole," Travis said with a short nod. "Riverbend's much the same, settled mostly by northerners and freedmen hunting a new start. That's the kind of place Duke Slade hates." Ella June's eyes narrowed. "How do you know so much about him?" A shadow darkened Cole's face. "Our paths crossed once." He said no more, only stood and moved back toward his bedroll. "Get some rest. We'll ride at first light." Sleep would not come for Ella. Her thoughts spun with questions about the man guarding her. Cole claimed to be a farrier, but there was something in his eyes when he spoke of Duke Slade, something personal that went deeper than campfire tales of an outlaw. At dawn, a heavy mist clung to the fields around the Thorne homestead. Cole was already at work loading the wagon when Ella stepped out of the barn, her meager belongings packed. Nell Thorne pressed food into her hands. Fresh bread strips of dried venison, a jar of peaches. "It ain't much, but it'll sweeten the trail," she said with a warm smile. "And mind yourselves on the road to Boone Creek. Jed swears riders have been watching the trail." Cole thanked them kindly, though his thoughts seemed elsewhere as he helped Ella to the seat and took the reins. They rode in near silence through the morning as the mist burned off into another sharp blue sky. The land grew rockier as they neared the Boone Creek foothills country ripe for ambush. "I've been thinking," Ella said when they paused to water the animals. "Maybe we should skip Boone Creek altogether." Cole looked up from adjusting the harness. "That'd mean no resupply." "Yes, but if Slade's men are watching the post like the Thorns said, it could be safer." "Don't we have enough to reach Riverbend?" "Barely," he admitted. "But you might be right. There's a lesser trail 5 miles up. Rough going, but it'll keep us off the main road." Ella felt relief wash over her when he turned the wagon toward that path. Soon the trail narrowed, twisting through gullies and patches of scrub pine that blocked the view. Twice, Cole raised a hand, listening hard before letting them move on. "Are we being followed?" Ella whispered during one halt. Not sure Cole murmured, eyes sharp. "But it don't feel right." By mid-afternoon, they were boxed into a canyon stone walls rising steep on both sides. Ella's hand drifted to the small derringer in her pocket, a gift from Grant before she left Ohio. Her pulse quickened. Her fear proved true. As they rounded a bend, Cole hauled the team to a stop. 3 mounted riders blocked the trail bandanas over their faces. "Down," Cole said quietly. "Under the wagon. Don't move till I tell you." Ella's heart pounded as she slipped to the ground, crouching behind the wheel. From there she could see Cole standing tall, his body loose but ready as he faced the strangers. "Afternoon, gents," he called evenly. "Something I can do for you?" "That depends," the leader answered, his voice thick with a southern drawl. "We're looking for a woman on this trail. Blonde, mid-20s. You seen her?" "Can't say I have," Cole replied coolly. "Just a farrier bound for Riverbend." The man laughed, cold and humorless. "Funny, since words come, you left the Thorne place this morning with a woman and a wagon. Why don't you invite her out here? Ain't polite to keep a lady under a wagon." Ella's blood froze. They knew she was there. She saw Cole's grip tighten on his rifle. "I'm alone," he said flatly. "So clear the road. I'd like to make Riverbend before dark." "I don't think so." The leader drew his pistol with easy skill. "Duke Slade wants a word with Ella June. And what Duke wants, Duke gets." They knew her name. The realization hit Ella like a blow. What came next blurred together. Cole's rifle snapped up 2 shots, cracking in quick succession. One outlaw toppled from his horse with a cry. Another was thrown when his mount reared. The leader fired back a bullet, smashing wood inches from Cole's head. "Run!" Cole shouted, diving behind a boulder and firing again. For a heartbeat, Ella froze, terror rooting her in place until a slug tore through the wagon canvas above her. Jolted into action, she scrambled backward, keeping low until she found cover behind a fallen log. Gunfire roared in the canyon, each shot echoing off the rock walls. Through the smoke and thunder, she glimpsed Cole, methodical, steady, his aim deliberate. He fought not like a simple blacksmith, but like a man seasoned by far darker battles. Movement flickered to Ella June's left. The outlaw thrown earlier was crawling through the brush, angling to flank Cole Travis. Without thinking, Ella slipped her derringer from her pocket, braced herself, and fired as he passed. Her hands shook, but the shot found its mark. The man staggered, clutching his leg before Cole's rifle cracked again. The outlaw dropped where he stood lifeless. For a moment the canyon went still. Ella held her breath, straining to hear any sign of danger. At last, Cole's voice cut through. "Ella, are you hurt?" "I'm fine," she called back, though her voice trembled. She rose from behind the log, her knees weak. Cole stepped out from cover rifle, steady, scanning the ground. 2 bodies lay sprawled in the dust. The third, their leader, was gone. "He slipped away," Cole said grimly, reloading fast. "And he'll be back with more. We need to move." Ella stumbled to the wagon, her legs barely carrying her. "They knew my name," she whispered, as Cole lifted her onto the seat. "Why would Duke Slade's men be hunting me?" "I don't know," Cole muttered, jaw set, as he took the reins. "But we'll learn the truth in Riverbend." He cast a glance at the sinking sun. "We put miles behind us before dark. We can reach the edge of town by tomorrow night." They drove long past sundown, winding through foothill trails Cole seemed to know by heart. When they finally stopped, it was in a hollow ringed with tall pines, the firelight hidden from prying eyes. As they worked in silence, Ella studied him anew, the cool precision with which he'd fought, the sure way he guided them, the calm control in chaos. This was no ordinary smith. "Who are you really?" she demanded once they sat by the fire. "And don't say you're just a farrier. No blacksmith shoots like that." For a long moment, Cole said nothing, the flames flickering in his eyes. At last he spoke, his tone low, resigned. "I was a scout for the Union. After the war, I took the badge, U.S. "Marshal!" He held her gaze. "I've been trailing Duke Slade's gang near a year. They've killed judges, settlers, anyone who stood in their path." "You're a lawman," Ella whispered, the pieces snapping into place. "That's why you're bound for Riverbend." Cole nodded once. "Word came Slade's planning something there. I didn't know it tied to you until today. But why me? I've never laid eyes on Duke Slade." "Maybe it ain't you at all," Cole said, though doubt tinged his voice. "He targets Union men. Your brother Grant Hollis fits that mark." Ella felt a chill. "If they know about me, they know about him. We'll warn him," Cole promised. "First thing when we ride in. For now you need rest. I'll keep watch." But sleep eluded Ella. Her mind spun with fear and unanswered questions. Why would a guerrilla-turned-outlaw hunt her by name? What bond tied her fate to Duke Slade? At first light they pressed on with urgency. The rough country gave way to softer plains, homesteads dotting the land signs of civilization drawing near. By mid-afternoon, they crested a rise and saw Riverbend at last, smoke curling from fresh chimneys. "We made it." Ella breathed relief flooding through her. "Don't ease up yet," Cole warned. "If Slade's got men in town, they'll be watching." Taking a quieter road from the east, they entered the growing settlement. Wagons rattled riders past new buildings, Rose life pulsing strong in the frontier town. "My brother's place is north side," Ella said, pointing. "Last letter said he built near the schoolhouse." They rolled through town, townsfolk casting curious glances. Ella searched every face, half for Grant, half for danger. Then the schoolhouse came into view, and just beyond it a blue 2-story home with a wide porch. As they stopped at the gate, the front door burst open. A tall man with sandy hair and a trimmed beard strode out. His face lit with shock, then joy. "Ella," he called, racing down the steps. "Good Lord, we weren't expecting you for another week!" Ella leapt from the wagon and ran into Grant Hollis's arms, tears stinging her eyes. Relief, exhaustion, gratitude, everything at once. "Grant," she gasped, pulling back to see his face. "You're all right," he said, confusion flickering. "Why wouldn't I be?" His gaze shifted past her to Cole, who stood at the wagon posture, guarded even in the moment of reunion. "And who's this?" Grant asked. "This is Cole Travis," Ella said quickly. He saved me when my team gave out on Widow's Hill. I'd never have made it without him." She faltered, unsure how much to reveal. "Let's get you inside first," Grant said, gently, noting her weariness. "You look worn to the bone. And there's someone I'd like you to meet." He turned to Cole, with a grateful nod. "You're welcome in my home, Mr. Travis. Any man who helps my sister has a place at my table," Grant Hollis said warmly. Cole Travis dipped his head in thanks, though his eyes kept sweeping the street. "I'd be obliged if we see to the wagon and stock first, then maybe somewhere private to talk." Something in his tone set Grant on edge. His smile faded. "Of course, stable's out back. We can talk in my study." As they led the wagon behind the house, Ella June spotted a petite woman with auburn hair waiting on the porch. May Hollis, the wife her brother had mentioned in his letters. The homely scene felt almost unreal after the perils of the trail. Once the animals were tended and Ella's trunk hauled inside, Grant ushered them into a snug study off the parlor. May brought coffee, then slipped out to leave them privacy. Grant shut the door. "All right, what's going on? You both look like you've seen specters." Cole cast a glance at Ella before facing her brother. "Mr. Hollis, I'm with the U.S. Marshals. I've been hunting an outlaw band led by Duke Slade. Yesterday we were jumped by 3 of his men asking for your sister by name." The color drained from Grant's face. "Slade," he breathed, collapsing into a chair. "You know him," Cole said flatly. Grant nodded, his eyes darting to Ella with guilt and fear. "During the war, I served in a unit that hunted guerrillas in Missouri. Duke Slade was among the worst butchered civilians, executed prisoners. We cornered him near the Kansas line. He escaped wounded, but most of his men died, including his younger brother. He swore vengeance. 2 of my comrades have been killed this past year. Another warned me Slade learned where I'd settled." His gaze held Ella's. "That's why I wrote for you to come. I thought you'd be safer here than in St. Louis. I never dreamed he'd strike at you on the trail." Ella's stomach turned. "You knew an outlaw might be after you, yet you urged me to cross half the frontier alone. I arranged an escort," Grant said quickly. "A man named Zeke Brand was supposed to meet your stage at Independence." "I never met him," Ella snapped. "Owen died in Independence, and I kept on alone until Cole found me." Grant's shoulders sagged. "Then Slade must have taken Brand. God forgive me, Ella. I thought I was shielding you." Cole had listened in silence, his jaw tight. Now he spoke. "Slade's man who rode off yesterday will bring word. He'll come here for both of you." "Then we'll leave," Grant said desperately. "Tonight. May and I can ride east with Ella." "Running won't solve it," Cole said firmly. "Slade will track you, and he won't ride alone." What then, Ella asked, though she already knew. Cole's eyes met hers, steady and sure. "We end it here. In Riverbend, on our terms." The hours that followed were a blur of planning. Grant, though shaken, quickly steadied. He knew the town, its alleys, its people. His word carried weight. By nightfall, a handful of men had gathered in his study, Sheriff Clay Rourke, who'd fought beside Grant during the war, and 3 tough ranchers trusted for their grit. Cole spread a rough map of Riverbend across the desk. "Slade rides with at least 8, maybe more if he's picked up drifters. He'll hit at dawn when the town's still. That's his way." "And how do you know his way?" Clay asked. "Because I've been on his trail a year," Cole said evenly. "And because it's what I'd do in his boots. The plan was simple but sound. Post riflemen at key points, move the women and children to the stone church on the rise, prepare crossfire to trap the raiders. Grant would remain in the open, playing the unwary settler to draw Slade in." "And what about Ella?" Sheriff Rourke asked, nodding toward her. "She'll be safe at the church with May," Grant said quickly. "No," Ella cut in, surprising even herself with the steel in her voice. "I won't hide while others risk their lives on my account. I can shoot, I proved it yesterday. I'll stand with you." Silence fell. Cole studied her, weighing not just her words, but her resolve. Finally, he gave a slow nod. She's right. Every shot counts. He tapped the map. She'll take position here at the upper window of Eli Cobb's store. Overlooks the main road, solid cover. Grant opened his mouth to object, but Ella's hard look stopped him. This is my fight too, she said quietly. By the time the meeting broke, men had scattered to make their preparations. Cole lingered behind in the dim study, his jaw set, his eyes shadowed with the burden of what dawn would bring. When the study emptied, and only he and Ella June remained, Cole Travis stepped closer, his face carrying a rare flicker of doubt. "You sure about this?" he asked softly. "There's no shame in choosing safety." Ella shook her head, a calm resolve, surprising even herself. "All my life, I've been guarded by my father, by Owen Tate, by Grant Hollis. This time I stand for what's mine." She met his eyes squarely. "Besides, I'm not useless. Don't forget I saved your hide yesterday." A shadow of a grin touched Cole's mouth. "That you did." He hesitated, then drew a small revolver from his coat. "This'll serve you better than that little Derringer 6-shots instead of too steadier aim." Their fingers brushed as she took it, lingering longer than either expected. "Thank you," Ella said, her words holding more weight than the gun itself. Cole's eyes softened in understanding. "Try to rest," he said. "I'll fetch you before dawn." But rest wouldn't come. Ella busied herself with May Hollis helping pack food and bandages for the women and children who'd take shelter in the stone church. Though May's fear was plain, her hands were steady as she prepared supplies. "He talks of you often," May said quietly, as they worked side by side, rolling strips of linen. "Grant, I mean. He worried when your letters stopped after independence. The trail's unpredictable," Ella answered, folding a bandage. "And I was lost after Owen Tate." May's eyes softened. "Grant's found peace here. This house, this town, it's what we dreamed of. You could have that too, Ella. A new beginning." Ella thought of Cole, the quiet strength, the way he had been there when she needed him most, the bond between them that words couldn't yet define. Perhaps she murmured. "If we survive tomorrow," May said firmly, "you will. Grant trusts that, Marshal, and so do I." The night blurred with preparation and waiting. Just before dawn, Cole appeared at Grant's door, a dark coat on his shoulders, his badge gleaming on his chest. The quiet traveler was gone. In his place stood the Marshal. "It's time," he said simply. Ella followed him through Riverbend's still streets, the first gray light creeping over the horizon. The town looked deserted, though she knew riflemen hid in place. Cole led her to Eli Cobb's general store, where the stout shopkeeper, scarred from Shiloh, unlocked the door. "Upper room's set," Eli said, handing Ella a loaded shotgun to pair with the revolver. "Window's got a good line on the street." Cole went up with her, checking the angles. "Stay low, keep to cover. Don't waste a shot unless it counts. These men won't spare you just 'cause you're a woman." "I understand," Ella said, crouching beside the window. Cole started to leave, then paused. "Ella," he said, her name rough on his tongue. "I know," she whispered. "After." He nodded, held her gaze a long moment, then slipped downstairs. The waiting was torture. Ella knelt at the window, watching, as dawn broke soft and slow. Birds sang blind to the storm about to break. Across town she saw Grant on his porch, moving with feigned ease, checking his watch like a man expecting company. The riders came through the mist like spirits from the underworld, 8 of them disciplined in their formation. At their head was a tall figure, his bearing all command. Duke Slade. Ella thought seeing at last the man who had haunted her brother's past, and now stalked her own. The gang advanced down the main street at a crawl their presence meant to terrify. The few townsfolk who hadn't been evacuated slammed shutters and bolted doors as the riders passed. At the center of town, Slade raised a hand, and his men halted. His voice rang out, carrying in the morning stillness. "Grant Hollis, show yourself. Face justice for what you done." On cue, Grant stepped from his porch spine, straight his walk measured. From her window, Ella saw the strain in his shoulders. "Duke Slade," he called back evenly. "I've been expecting you." A cold laugh came from the outlaw leader. "That's so. Then you know why I've come." "For revenge?" Grant said plainly. "For your brother, for your men?" "But that was war, Slade. Soldiers following orders, same as you." "My brother was 19. Slade spat, the mask slipping. "Shot while he tried to surrender. You call that war, I call it murder. Then take your grievance with me," Grant answered, voice steady. "The rest of this town is innocent." Slade's hand went to his pistol. "There are no innocents in war, Hollis. You should know that by now." What came next was a blur of thunder and fire. Duke Slade's pistol cleared leather, but a crack split the air from the saloon roof opposite Cole Travis's post. The bullet tore into Slade's arm, throwing his shot wide. Gunfire exploded across the street as hidden riflemen poured lead into the gang. From her perch above Eli Cobb's store, Ella June steadied her revolver on a rider, trying to slip around Grant Hollis's flank, and squeezed the trigger. The outlaw toppled from his saddle, clutching his shoulder. The town roared with chaos, men shouting, rifles snapping, hooves pounding. Some of Slade's men tried to break away, others charged headlong into the storm. Ella kept her eyes fixed on her brother, crouched behind a water trough, his face carved with grim determination as he fired back. Across the way, she glimpsed Cole moving with quick precision, signaling men calling orders steady as bedrock amid the fury. The fight stretched on like eternity, though later she'd learn it lasted less than 15 minutes. The tide broke when Sheriff Clay Rourke and his deputies charged from the south end, boxing the raiders in. "Surrender," Slade Cole's voice rang clear during a lull. "Your men are down. You're surrounded." For a heartbeat, it seemed Slade might choose death. He stood bleeding in the dust, his gang dead wounded or throwing up their hands. "Never thought a Hollis would show spine," he called, sneering at Grant. "Your sister's shown more grit on the trail than I gave her credit for." "It's over!" Slade. Grant answered, stepping from cover. "Drop the gun." Slade's hand twitched toward his holster. Ella's finger tightened on her trigger. But Cole stepped into the open, rifle leveled. "Don't." The word carried such iron certainty that Slade froze. Slowly, with a bitter smile, he raised his hands. "Marshal Travis, I reckon," he drawled. "Been looking forward to meeting you. Can't say I share the feeling," Cole replied, easing closer. "Duke Slade, you're under arrest for murder robbery and assaulting a federal officer. You'll stand trial in Denver." As Sheriff Rourke's men bound the outlaws, Ella climbed from her post, her legs trembling as the rush ebbed. Townsfolk crept from hiding, tending the hurt, piecing back their shaken world. She found Grant first, and threw her arms around him. "You're safe," she whispered, letting the fear finally spill. "Thanks to you and Travis," he said, holding her close. "When I begged you to come to Riverbend, I never thought you'd end up saving it." "Where is he?" Ella asked. Grant nodded toward the jail. "He's locking Slade down. He'll ride with a federal escort tomorrow." He hesitated, studying her. "You care for him, don't you?" Ella could no longer deny it. "Yes," she breathed, "though I don't yet know what that means." The day was filled with work mending wounds, clearing wreckage, steadying a bruised town. Only at dusk did Ella find Cole again. He stood on her brother's porch hat in hand, his face unreadable. "Marshall," she said suddenly, shy. "Mrs. June," he replied formally, then softened. "Ella, is it over Harlan's in the jail? Double guards on him. The detachment will haul him to Denver tomorrow. Your brother's safe. The town's safe." "And you?" she asked quietly. "What happens to you now?" Cole looked out over Riverbend. "The service has been pushing me to take a posting. Less trail work, more steady duty. Didn't suit me before." His lips tugged in the faintest smile. "Now I see the sense in it." And now Ella pressed hope, tugging at her. "Now I'm thinking a lawman might do worse than settle in a town worth fighting for." His gaze held hers, the usual reserve, stripped away. "Ella, these past days, I've come to care for you more than I thought I could again. I know you're still grieving, but—" She touched a finger to his lips, boldness sparking in her eyes. "Life out here doesn't wait for long courtships, Cole. What matters is truth. And the truth is, I care for you too." The kiss came tentative, then deepened with all they'd carried and all they still dared to hope. When at last they parted, Cole's arms stayed firm around her. "I can't promise an easy road," he said. "Marshall's life is hard even settled." Ella smiled through her tears. "I don't need easy. I just need you." In the days that followed, as Duke Slade was hauled east in irons and Riverbend healed, Ella took her post as teacher at the new schoolhouse. Cole Travis pinned on his badge as the town's marshal. Together they began to build not just a town's safety, but a life rooted in hard truth, forged in fire, and tempered by love. They were wed that autumn in Grant and May Hollis's garden, the maples blazing red and gold, the promise of their future, stretching out like an open trail. As Ella June spoke her vows, her mind drifted back to Widow's Hill, to a weary mule, a failing wagon, and the silent cowboy who had stepped from the horizon at the very moment she needed him most. "I've been thinking," Cole Travis said that evening, as they sat on the porch of their new home, a modest cabin on the edge of town with the river glinting beyond the trees. "About our first meeting?" Ella asked with a smile. "Widow's Hill." Cole nodded. "You were trying to drag that wagon up on your own, stubborn as a mule yourself, and I hitched my horse beside yours without a word." He took her hand, his thumb tracing slow circles against her palm. "I didn't know then," he said softly, "that I was hitching my life to yours too." "Would you have done anything different if you had known?" she asked, leaning her head to his shoulder. Cole thought a moment, then shook his head. "Not a single thing. Every mile, every fight, it all led us here. And here's where I want to stay." As twilight settled over Riverbend, the sky painted in violet and gold, Ella June. Travis knew with absolute certainty that after every hardship, every danger, she had finally found her true home, not in a place, but in the heart of the quiet lawman beside her, whose strength had matched her own from the very start. The years that followed brought trials and blessings alike. Riverbend grew with the coming of the railroad, bringing settlers' businesses and the troubles of progress. Cole's badge kept him busy keeping order in a restless territory, while Ella's school thrived under her care. Their family grew as well. A daughter, Annie Jo, born in the spring of 1869, followed by twin sons Sam Ray and Ben Roy 2 years later. Their simple cabin expanded room by room, serving as both family home and a place where Cole sometimes met with deputies or territorial officials. Through every storm they faced it together, the bond forged on the trail only deepening with time. Ella never forgot the lesson of Widow's Hill, that burdens grow lighter when shared with the right partner. On the 10th anniversary of that day, Cole gave her a gift, a small painting of a wagon on a hill, a woman straining against its weight, and a lone rider approaching in the distance. To remind us, he said, as she unwrapped it, of where our story began. Ella hung it in their room where it stayed for all the years that followed, a symbol of the journey that brought them together, and the love that carried them through a lifetime of frontier trials and triumphs. And whenever newcomers to Riverbend asked how the town's marshal and its beloved schoolteacher first met, they would share a private smile before telling the tale of a woman who tried to haul a wagon up a hill alone, and the cowboy who hitched his horse beside hers without a word. If this story has touched your heart, I invite you to stay with us to discover more true tales of the Wild West. Stories that honor resilience, tenderness, and the spirit that God placed in those who blazed the trail. Subscribe, share, leave your thoughts in the comments, and join us once again to journey across this untamed land. Thank you.